There it is. Okay. All right. So in the last class, we went over a recap of what you guys had previously done. We also went over some content involving test planning and well, I'll share my screen. Let me just share my screen first. I wonder where it's gonna take it. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we went over some of this stuff, some of these slides. We're talking about test scenarios and test cases. You guys saw the video. I hope some of you took the time to watch it again. This is very insightful. And today we're going to continue with test data generation. Now, this is just going to be, this is just mainly going to be more spoken and contextual rather than anything else. Because in order for you to understand test data management, you will have to create the test data. But I will give you the basic understanding of it, and it's essentially really not complex or difficult so to grasp. So we'll go over that. And then next we're going to start with the test plan. I will try to cover it for today. If that's not the case, we'll probably continue it in the next session. But hopefully I'll be able to cover it today. There will be some follow-up homework that I'm going to give you guys, but I'm not going to give you test planning and scenarios at the same time. So it's going to be a bit too much. There's also something else that I wanted to go over with you guys. Let me stop sharing this and start sharing again because there's one thing that I wanted to. So some folks were asking some questions about scenarios and test cases, and I wanted to make sure that you guys grasp the idea well. And I came across this. This is Guru 99. How many of you are familiar with Guru 99?
I am.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so you guys should be familiar with Guru 99. It's a very helpful website. So you can check out that link that I sent on the chat. It will help you understand some of that stuff, and also a lot of the stuff that we cover, that I will cover, you can also find here. I'm pretty sure they have a lot of information that you can read, that you can just get a cup of tea or coffee and just start reading some of that information. And it's going to be very helpful for you. So this is really good material for after lessons. So, but the main thing, I don't think I'm sharing still. Can you see my screen? All right, hopefully my screen is visible and you're looking at the page that I just sent you on the chat here, right? So it gives you questions as to like, what is test cases? What is a test scenario? And then it gives you examples. And this is why I like it a lot, because it shows you those examples also. So just wanted to make sure that, if we're talking about test scenarios, pay attention to the simplicity and the high level verbiage that it carries, right? So test scenario 1 is check the search functionality, and test scenario 2 is check the payments functionality, right? So these are very high level, so you should never consider that these are test cases. Okay, so see, this is a habit. Check the login functionality right here. So this scenario 3, check the login functionality. So if you come down here really quickly, in Amazon webpage, when you log in, this is the sign in, right? This is the login functionality that's talking about in test scenario 3. So if you have a scenario that says test the login functionality, you know, you have so many things that you have to test for. So that's where your test cases come in place. Okay, so just really recapping, it's all about detail, the detail of the functionality of the behavior in under test. Okay, so you can clearly see here that the login functionality has about 8 test cases, right? So one simple high level verbiage here, sentence here, carries this many test cases. Okay, and each of those test cases also contain their own test steps. Okay, so let's not forget about the testing steps. So check the system behavior when valid email and valid email ID and password is entered. So your test steps are going to be, okay, so I was about to say given. So you know, you want to have some prerequisite, right? Prerequisite will be that you have that you have credentials, right? And if you don't have credentials, then you're also going to have to test to create your Amazon account. But this is not the test to create your Amazon account scenario. This is a login functionality. So if it's a login functionality, you should have as a prerequisite a user. Okay. So that user that you have now, you're going to start putting those steps. So so the step 1 is input your email ID. The step 2 is input your password. Step 3 is click sign in. Step 4 is validate the sign in behavior. So this one test case here, once again, it had about 4 steps. So you can't forget the steps either. Okay, so it's important that you remember that the steps are present. All right, and so just wanted to kind of bring that back here to make sure, because there was a lot of questions last class, and wanted to make sure that there was no confusion. So is there any confusion from anyone so far? Very good. Okay, so we can move on now. Goodbye. Now we're going to jump into test data generation. Was it a question for me? Guess not. Okay, so we're going to go now into what is, minimize this in the way. Okay, so let's bring it here. So test data generation, or test data per se, is basically the concept of having you know, required data pre anything you do. So last class we talked about a policy administration system, right? And the need for dependencies of somebody creating say a case ID or of sorts. Is that something we discussed last class?
I don't believe so.
No, I don't think so.
I guess I'm mixing this up with another class, and I'm sorry. Okay, well, so let's put it this way. Let me give you this example. I'm not going to give you that example because it's going to probably get complex. So let's get the basic. Let's get basics. What is test data in software testing? Can somebody answer that question?
Well, you just said that test data is required data before creating any tests, correct?
That is true. I did say that, but I, I would like you to elaborate a little more than what I said.
I would
Like-
like to say it's information that is gained from experiences that, you know, or reviews or anything that was conducted prior. So that we can sit there and create a more functional, I guess, programming to then make sure that the requirements are completed to its full extent. Or am I chopping that up right now?
A bit, but it's okay.
Okay, all right.
You were heading in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
So here is so you said good things and then you said, and then you started deviating, but that's okay. So what is test data in the simplest terms is the bread to your butter. Okay, I hope that doesn't, I hope you all understand that analogy. It is the bread to your butter. So you cannot eat butter by itself, right? I mean, at least I don't. And I don't know anybody who does. So where do we put butter? We put butter on bread. Why? Because it tastes better, or because we want to toast the bread or something, whatever, right? So test data, if required, has to be mandatory. And most times, or oftentimes, it will be required. A simple example of that, it's going to be, I'm gonna bring this back here, actually, because this is actually a good example. When I mentioned the scenarios here, the test scenario, right? I mentioned test scenario number 3 here. Check the login functionality, right? In the checking the login functionality, I mentioned that, see, if we go to Amazon, so if we go to Amazon, we'll see that we have the sign in here, the sign in text, the email, phone number with the text field, and the password with the text field, and also a link text for forget your password, right? And then we're gonna have a button here saying sign in, and then we're gonna have a checkbox here with text directing you to whether you want to stay signed in or not. And then we got some details here drop down. So little details drop down here. And then following that, you have new to Amazon with a question mark, create your Amazon account. So what here will be your test data in this scenario? In the check login functionality, what would be your test data?
The email and password.
That is correct. The email and password here is your test data. So that essentially starts to become something like, let's see, can I open this up? Just open a new sheet here. So I'm gonna start by saying that test data, and then I'm gonna say right, number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. So in this test data, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna call this username. I'm gonna call this password. I'm gonna call that password. And then I'm gonna start saying, you know, some random characters with numbers, just characters, just numbers, and the password the same thing, right? And so on and so forth. And you're gonna have stuff with special characters, right? Dean with an ad, And so you're gonna, this is starting to become test data for you because you want to test if special characters are allowed in the textual, right? So this become negative test cases if the requirement states that no special characters are permitted, or the special characters are permitted. And then you write a password, right? And you add special characters, bats, forward slashes, you name it. So this essentially here is test data. So if I had a test case like this, if I had a scenario like this, it says, if I'm working on a story and the story is create a login functionality for Amazon.com, then I'm going to be okay. So I'm the tester for this. So if I'm going to create, if I'm going to check the login functionality, I need to have already some users, right, that I can use to sign in. So these are going to be this right here in this test case. It's going to be all part of my users of my test data to test just this scenario test case here. Okay, so it's important that you do understand that test data is pretty much mandatory in a lot of scenarios. And obviously the test data you can use for other different test cases if relatable. But this is the gist of it. So when creating your test cases, you need to make sure that you have the right equipment, right? Before you go to work, you need the right tools, right? If you're working construction, if you're working carpentry, if you're working as an electrician, you need your tools to do the job. So it's the same thing as software. Okay, so it's important that we create it before we execute our tests, because what's the point of creating test data before you execute a test, after you execute a test, right? You can't even execute a test without the test data, right? Unless you're just adding characters in the text fields without any actual user creation, which will be a negative scenario, of course. So where do I use it? Like I said, anywhere you go, anywhere you present yourself, anywhere you're hired, you hardly will work in an environment where you will not need test data. Test data is essential to creating any test cases, executing any test cases. So do I need to provide you guys with another example, or is this clear enough?
I'm okay.
Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, it's clear.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so with that said, we can move on from test data and we can start entering one of the toughest things I think it is for anybody learning testing, and that is a test plan. So a test plan, that word, it's just two words, right? Test plan. Can someone enlighten me and tell me what a test plan is? So what do they think a test plan is?
So it's a detailed document where it explains like the strategy and resources, estimation, all that.
Okay, you read that, I got that. Yes, that is the gist of it. So how do you create that? If it's a detailed document that tells me whatever you said, a strategy, what else did you say?
Resources. I think.
Resources. So what is resources here?
Like a worker,
That
money.
Would it be from the test data?
The
I'm sorry.
the requirement.
No, whoever was speaking before, I think, started to say the right thing.
Would it be from the
Yeah,
test data?
No, not that.
Oh, sorry.
I was saying that money, like resources, and
True.
also employees.
Yes. Money is a resource. Employees are a resource. Time is a resource. There are a lot of things that counts as a resource. Anything that is expendable becomes a resource because not expendable, sorry, not the right word. Anything that can be expensed, it's a resource, right? Money is expense. How is money expense? Money is expense through consuming time, through paying employees, through paying contractors, paying for services like frameworks and services like AWS that might be needed for testing, browser stack, right? All of these things become a resource. Very good. So, but let's carry on. So if you have to choose from A and B, if you were on a team and you say, hey, boss, why do we need a test plan? I don't, why do we need a test plan? Can we just create, can we just create whatever we're gonna do? Like, can we just test the product like that, since we know what the developers are doing, since we have the requirements, right? So, but then you have scenario A, I'm the manager, do everything as I say. Or B, you have someone that says, okay, let me explain why we need a test plan. Who would you agree with more?
Of course, B.
Okay. B, why?
Because I think we need a test plan before we actually do the test. It's more useful and it is a lot of benefit. I can
But I'm the
explain
manager,
how-
but I'm the
yeah.
manager. I'm telling you, just do it.
You are the manager, so I'll try to convince you.
You're gonna convince me, the manager? Okay. Good luck.
Yes.
Good
I
luck
think
when you got fight.
I think
Um,
I ask you to do the test. This is our job and we have to do this regardless.
That's right. That is right. It is your job. It is you who will be doing the detail testing, who will be doing the detail work for whatever it is that you're doing, right? Even if you have a manager that says, do it, your job as a professional is to say, we're not following protocol. Any company you go to and you have a manager like that, believe me, you guys will fail. The reason why is because you need organization. A works. A works. For the most part. In certain roles, in certain companies or jobs, right? So, but it doesn't work in areas where detailed, where documentation, where multiple people are working on one product. So a test plan is going to give folks the right direction is going to give folks the right way to do things without having to experience hardship. Or you might still experience hardship, but that doesn't mean that it will be um, as bad as it would have been, right? So with that said, definitely B. Now let's go back to the question as to why do we need a test plan and what is a test plan? So we're looking to have a roadmap, right? That roadmap is going to be able to provide feasibility for resources, as mentioned prior, right? For costs, scheduling, goals. Now, what do I mean by goals? Remember, you're a tester, you're a software tester, and you're working on a test plan. So what would be your goal?
To make the app bug free.
I think also finish the requirements in that specific sprint.
Well, yes and yes.
Give 100% coverage for this
Conditionally.
app testing.
Yes to that. We're looking for 100% coverage. We're also looking for the first answer to make a defect free software. You know, that's the idea. Doesn't mean that it always works. Within the sprint, however, it's not really something that we go to. So we don't really generate test plans for sprints, because in sprints it's consider that it's a lot of work, and you won't really be able to do anything if you're writing test plans in each sprint. It's going to be a lot of documentation and whatnot. However, in sprints you have what's called user stories, so that becomes your guidance there. The test plan is something that you create depending on the model that you're following, of course. So whether you're following waterfall, whether you're following agile, right? It's going to have different time frames, different timetables, right? So in a waterfall model, for example, my test plan would start being written very early. So as the developers are working on the code, so that's when the test plan starts to become developed, right? So your test lead, testers, you guys are going to start working on all of these things. You guys are going to start working on the test plan documentation, so that by the time the developers are done with their work, and it comes to you, the code comes to you, what's going to happen is that you will be what you call it, you will be ready to test. You will know what you have to do fairly early. Okay, so it should give you a good idea as a tester of what your process should be or should look like, and it'll provide you with a lot of insight as to what you're gonna need, what's gonna be consumed, and the amount of effort that it will take. Okay. So what is a test plan though? Somebody said it earlier, a detailed documentation. So it's all about the planning, right? And the plan has to be detailed. So as a team, say, in a waterfall model per se, you have a 6 months project. And in this 6 months, you're gonna have 1 month to do the testing. So before that month is up, or at least before a month before your testing month begins, you should already have the test plan created. Now, what's gonna happen is that you're gonna end up presenting this test plan to your team, to your stakeholders, so that everyone can review it and go over it and say, yes, this makes sense, or hey, no, you're missing stuff here, right? So it varies like that. So with that said, what you're gonna be looking at is your goals, testing items, and by testing items, we're talking about like testing scenarios, like an application of going back to Amazon here. Where's Amazon? Going back to Amazon login functionality here. We're gonna be looking at the testing item here is gonna be check the login functionality, check the payments functionality, check the search functionality, and so on and so forth. So this becomes your testing items, just so you don't be confused with verbiage here. You want to consider what is not included in the testing. For example, you have situations where you have out-of-bound testing, right? So out-of-bound testing means that it's not something that is considered within the boundaries of your scenario, but you still feel that could apply to your testing because your code or the team's code might affect set functionality, right? That's out of bound. So if any available, if any identified, you also want to make sure you know that. There's going to be the testing process, right? So what process are you as a team going to be using? Are you going to be using V model? Are you going to be using waterfall model? What's going to be included and whatnot? So testing resources, once again, going back to what we spoke earlier, the resources involve teams, team members, right? It involves the framework. It involves the amount of money you spend on certain tools. Like say you're creating a framework, you got to do API testing, so you need an API testing tool like Postman or SOAP UI, right? So you need all these things. Your framework, say it's going to be Selenium, it has or maybe it's an actual tool that you need, right? So companies may pay for a paid version of IntelliJ, right? Because of certain benefits that you get from it, and so on. So these are the testing resources that you also want to consider when adding tools, employees, time spent, and whatnot. The testing schedule, it's going to be very straightforward. The testing schedule is really about, the time that is going to take you, the team, to perform the testing in a waterfall model. Once again, you have perhaps maybe about a month to the testing. If you're working in an agile team, you're going to be working in like 1 week, perhaps, right? So in 1 week, you should be done with all the testing. So it varies like that. It varies by team and it varies by company. In the test schedule, you also want to make sure that you're including the test schedule for other items. So so the testing process here, going back to it, you have your end-to-end testing, you have your system integration testing, you have regression testing, right? You have smoke testing. So you have all of these things also to note down here aside from everything else. And then lastly, you want to talk about the risk and contingencies that you will be taking. For example, you have a release, your end-to-end requires or is dependent on say, I'm just gonna throw this out here, a file feed team, right? So I'm not sure if you know what a file feed team is, so let me give you a different example. If I happen to go back to Amazon, and say you need test data, right? You need to create your employees. But the functionality to create an employee has not yet been created. So instead, you say, okay, the team that is capable of creating data, say, for example, the developers, right? Or you need to put in a request to create an employee, to create the test data. This can happen in different companies, right? Depending on their security level and security clearance. So you're gonna say, okay, so I need to create a request to get a resource, to get credentials, right? In order for me to do testing on the scenario for checking the login functionality. So if that is the case, going back here, if that is the case, then it becomes a risk because whenever you're sending the request for data creation, it takes about 2 days for your data to come back. So if you send a request today, it'll come back on Friday, right? Or on Thursday. So that is time wasted. That is time that you could have continued to test, right? So that goes in as a risk. If I had a contingency for that, I would say we will be sending requests for data a week prior, right? A week prior to starting the testing, so that we have enough test data available. However, here's another risk. If I do create the data prematurely, right? But then there was a delay in code or some sort of discrepancy, and it had to go in, or like a late defect found within the sprint. And now this goes back to the development, and the code changes are involved. And so now the team has to create another build. They has to send another build, meaning that they have to send another they have to check in new code again into the application. And once they check in this new code, it has to be migrated to the environment where you're going to be testing. Now, this data that you previously created is lost. So that is another risk, right? So you can have many different risks for many different reasons, right? So dependency on other teams that won't be available, dependency on environments. So for example, environments are, let's say you have the dev environment, the QA environment, the user testing, the user acceptance testing environment, UAT environment, right? So, but the code is not going to be in the QA environment until say your testing is slated to begin on 5/20, right? On May 20th. But then the last day of the sprint, say, is supposed to be tomorrow, right? Not tomorrow, Thursday, 5/19, right? So on 5/19, the developers and all the code should have been in QA for you to begin. Now that is still a risky process. Your code should be at least a week ahead in your end-to-end environment. But alas, if that is the case, regardless, but then you have the developers running late on code because, say, a defect was found late in and now it needs again another change. So that poses problems also on your team's deliverables. So that is another risk, right? So you start raising risks for your end-to-end in every level, at every level. Even while you're doing the end-to-end, like once it starts, you still can raise risks because it happens. Okay, so defects can come in and they don't get fixed for a while, and you're almost done with your testing. You're about to enter code freeze. You know, that's a high risk that can put your project, your release in jeopardy. So risks are more often than not always present, and you have to make sure that you identify them. A lot was said there. Any question? Very good. Let's talk about the goals. So the goals may be different for each test. We talked about that, right? So you know, you may have different functionalities, different scenarios, and of course the goal is always to make sure we have a defect-free. We have a defect-free. What is it? I'm going blank here. Software. And so we want to make sure that, you know, that we identify that, but not always is that the main focus of things. You know, we can look at some goals can switch to enhancing the vulnerability of the application, to enhancing security of a prior vulnerability. You know, the goals doesn't necessarily need to be noted as having a defect-free application, but should be noted mostly with the actual goal of the requirements, the business value, I should say, right? The business value, the KPIs, key performance indicators, right? So you want to make sure that you have those, that you're noting those, that you're aware of those. So once again, from what I said, they often have to match the product goal, right? So once again, if your goal is to enhance the user experience in the login functionality by adding 70 buttons and 3 extra payments, you know, that's your goal, right? So but it has to, but when you write the goal in your test planning, it has to match it has to match to what the requirement, what the end goal, what the business value is going to be. During customer requirements for satisfaction is a bit broad. A level deeper examples are ensure that all the requirements features exist in the system, ensure that the developed components and the purchase components integrated as specified, ensure that performance targets, response time, resource capacity, transaction rates are met, ensure the system is robust, stress the system. This is performance testing. Ensure that the user interface is clear, novel, or catchy. Ensure that the required functionality and features are high quality. Ensure that industry standards are met. Ensure that internationalism works, laws and looks. Ensure that the software is migratable. So these are all possible goals that you would need to have written down on your goals section of your test plan, right? So it can vary from a lot of different things. Okay. The testing items as explained earlier, we have the testing deliverables, right? So this is the scenarios that you want to test, that you're going to be testing. So looking at the requirement specification, the design specification, the executable code, right? Any user guides or use cases, initialization data, right? So you want to start testing individual functions, features, and depths of the goal. So again, that in simple terms, that is the testing scenario. So if you have if you have these three as your scenarios in the requirements, these are your testing items. Those are your testing items. Those are the ones that you will add here, right? Logical application functions, sure. Detail level, small applications. The detail level, that really depends. That's probably for very small enhancements. So don't put too much focus at very detailed level when it comes to testing items, unless it's a high priority release. And it needs to be noted because it's good always for the stakeholders to have that visual. You know, the scenario will be if you have the user interface. So you want to list all the screens that you will be visiting, right? So in this scenario, say for example, you have the login functionality, and once you do the login, it's gonna send you somewhere else, right? It's gonna send you to the search functionality. So you're gonna go through each of the screens, right? You're gonna want to to note down the stuff that you're gonna be validating and asserting. So that's what this will be. You know, and which pages after you click on something, what page is going to appear. Like if I click on sign in, what am I gonna see, right? So this is where you add this stuff in the user interfaces. And your navigation obviously is your end-to-end flow. So you're gonna describe you know, where you start and where you end. Questions? Okay, so not included in the test once again. So you want to include a list of items that are not included in your requirement, but that it is essential for you to include in your test plan, and you're testing for X, Y, or Z reasons, right? So you want to know the reasons, the low risk items, and if any future release item that has cold code is going to also be a part of that. Cold code is basically you know, a functionality that was developed ahead of time, but the code is not integrated in the repository. It's not integrated in the current version or the build, right? So because it's going to be done later on. In any company you go to now, that will probably be called feature toggling. And then last but not least, if it's not a high priority item for the release, but still was part of the requirement, you also want to make sure you know that. Testing process, once again, you want to talk about the methodology that you will be applying. It's going to be waterfall, it's going to be agile, it's going to be you know, what's going to be your end-to-end flow. Are you going to have any data coming through? So you know, your end-to-end process, your smoke testing, your regression testing, all of this stuff, right? So everything that's executable and whatnot. So if you're going to have any installations prior, the type of testing you're going to be doing as well. Okay, and I think I asked you last class if you guys were familiar with the types of testing, so I don't think we need to get into any of that. Very good. For the testing resources, as we explained already quite a few times, testing resources really involve the employees and everything else that you will be that has an expense, right? So this is important actually, the skill of the people or the employees. You can have a team with different skill levels, And I'm not talking about only having like a junior, a mid-level, or an associate level, or a senior level resources. Obviously, those are still cost at our expense. But different skill sets as well are very important. And these skill sets are also become a resource, because you also have to spend on you have to spend more on somebody who has the skill set that you need, right? Or someone is specific to a type of testing, right? So somebody that has to perform manual testing for X, Y, or Z, right? So somebody's doing database testing, and they can only do manual testing for it because they didn't include it in their automation framework. And then you have a software engineer, you have a QE, a quality engineer, that's going to be dealing with the automated testing. So you have all these levels, right? Any training that's required prior to the testing, say you have a vendor that says, okay, well, here's a new dashboard that we created, and this dashboard is going to go into the new release. It's going to require your team to manage it there and forward. So that requires some training. So that's also training, that's expense, because you're sending your folks to training that is costed. So we talked about non human resources, right? And so we're talking about tools here, right? Configuration management, automated testing tools, test scripts, testing script tools, any hardware network that has to be set up, database connections and whatnot, and also environment access. So we talked about all of these things. Anything that is expense, anything that requires you to touch, or anything that is required to complete the testing becomes a resource. So keep that in mind. The testing schedule. You want to base it on the amount of the testing items, but more often than not, again, depending on the practice, we can take it can take 2 weeks, 1 week. It really all depends on your company's I don't want to say policies, because it's really not a policy, but practices. That's what it is. It's practices.
I'm sorry, this is where the the pointing schedule, the pointing system starts kicking in?
No, you're talking about agile ceremonies. I'm talking about testing schedule here for test planning. Those are very different things.
Okay.
Yeah. In agile scrum, to be specific, you have ceremonies such as you have the daily stand-up. You have the daily stand-up. You have sprint review. Before you have sprint review, you have sprint planning. Sprint planning, say story grooming. You have a sprint review, and then you have a retro or retrospective meeting, right? It's called a retrospective meeting. If you hear retro, this is what they mean, retrospective meeting. So on your daily stand-up, this is really something that happens as the title implies, every day that you're working, not Saturday and Sunday, every day, where this is normally 15 minutes, shouldn't really be more. But as time changes and companies continue to adapt agile, they can't really follow all the ceremonies to the letter, but so sometimes this goes 15 to 30 minutes really. But this should not be more than 15 minutes, to be honest, and the Scrum Master should be the one controlling that time. So it's really for you to give a status of what you did yesterday, what you're doing today, and if you have any issues. That's really all it is. Okay, so if this was the daily standard right now, I would say like Rakib, what's your status, right? So you're gonna tell me what you work on yesterday, if yesterday wasn't Sunday, and then you're gonna tell me what you're gonna work on today, right? So you worked on user story, blah blah blah, and you're gonna continue working on user story, blah blah blah. And so far you have no issues, no impediments. If you have an impediment, you can say, I do have an impediment that is dependent on test data required by X, Y, or Z team, and I already sent an email to them. So I'm just waiting to get my requests fulfilled. So that's really all this is. The sprint planning, the team gets together. The team gets together the first day of the sprint to make sure that they're going over all of the stories that they committed themselves to. All the stories that they committed themselves to for the sprint. The start say today, and so that sprint planning becomes essential because it's already committed work, and you want to make sure that the points allocated are gonna you guys will be able to meet the deadline, right, for that sprint. The story grooming is something that happens somewhere before the sprint begins. It can be a week before, it can be some days before or whatnot, but the story grooming is basically making sure that you're going over the stories for your next sprint, and you're grooming those, like you're adding the right documentation, you're making sure that you're adding the right dependencies, if any, to those stories. So by the time that you hit the sprint planning, all you need to do is just to confirm your acceptance, your commitment. A sprint review is something that happens with the stakeholders more often than not. The sprint review is really going to go through the stuff that you work during the sprint with the stakeholders. So all the work that you committed yourself to, right? The stakeholders are going to want to see that. So this happens on an every 2-week basis. The daily stand-up happens every day. And then you have the retrospective meeting, which is where you just get together with the team. This doesn't involve any stakeholders. It's really just your team. You guys talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what you need to do better for the next sprint, right? It can be changed by the Scrum Master as a team needs it, but that's really the gist of it. So the daily stand-up happens every day. The story grooming happens sometimes once a week or once every 2 weeks, but more often than not, it should be once a week. And then you have the sprint planning, which happens once every 2 weeks, the sprint review, and the retrospective as well, once every 2 weeks. So those are the ceremonies of Agile. Just want to take the time to explain that, given that the question arrived, because this is very important to understand.
Right. The question that I had was, do they use that point system for
No.
the test schedule? That was
No.
my initial question. Okay, no, thank you.
I did not get that from your initial question.
Yeah, no, I didn't need the review for the Agile part, but
Sure.
I just
Okay.
wanted to. But thank you, I appreciate
The pointing system is
Yeah.
the pointing system
strictly for
is
Agile.
yes.
Okay.
It's the pointing system happens here at the grooming level
Mhm.
and at the planning level.
Okay, thank you.
This is where pointing happens. All right, continuing. So based on the amount of items that you have, based on the amount of scenarios, based on the amount of things you're gonna be testing. So once again, you're gonna be testing smoke test. You're gonna run the smoke test. You're gonna run system integration testing. You're gonna run end-to-end testing. Then you're gonna run the regression test. And so all of these items require their own schedule, right? Some items you might be able to start at the same time. Some items you might need to wait until one ends to begin the other and whatnot. So, you know, so you want to make sure that you have the right testing schedule noted down. Any other questions with this? Okay,
I have a question from the previous slide, please.
sure.
It says schedule containing the following information should be, what information they're talking about? The task, assigned person and
The
stuff?
task, assigned person, and time duration. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So do you need me to elaborate a little more on that area?
Yeah, if you, could, that'll be
Okay,
nice.
absolutely. Just ask me. So the schedule containing the following information should be stated, right? So tasks, so resources, once again, as I explained earlier, you may have resources in team that some folks may perhaps do the database testing. Some folks might need to do environment setup, and others might need to do what you call it, progression testing, automated regression testing. So these are tasks that you have here. All of those that I mentioned, those are the tasks. And then an assigned person to those tasks. So those are things that you need to note down also on the schedule when you write it down. So for example, based on the amount of items that I'm testing. So if I'm gonna run the smoke test, I'm gonna say, okay, smoke test being a task, the assignee would be Lisa, sorry, I think Maria. Maria, and Maria is going to take so and such time to complete this. So if it's a smoke test, say the smoke test is supposed to run for about 20 to 30 minutes, depending, right, if it's automated. And so those are the things that you note here. The task is smoke test. The assigned person will be Maria. The time duration is going to be 20 minutes.
And who assigned those, like the QA?
Well, remember, this is the test plan. So this is going to be obviously things that your team already does on a regular basis. So, this is not something that just happens out of the blue. So the test plan is something that gets created based on your team composition, right? So say for example, you are working in a team and your role here is really to do the integration testing, the system integration testing. So you are part of the system integration testing team task, and you are the assigned person to it because you're the one who's going to be working on it, and it's going to take you about 3 days to complete, right? So that is your assigned task. You are the assignee, and that's the time duration that it should take you.
And who assigned those positions?
The testing lead. The
Okay.
test lead should be the
Scrum
one.
Master somehow? Sorry.
Come again?
Sorry to cut you. So somehow Scrum Master is involved there, who,
No, not the Scrum Master, the test lead. So the test lead is gonna be the main person here. The QA team gets involved in the creation of it, depending on the test lead, but it's mostly the test leads is going to be working with this. Okay, so
So whoever's the lead of that project will assign you your task.
correct. The Scrum Master, they really don't get involved in this because, you know, unless you can always ask the Scrum Master questions, but this is not really something the Scrum Master gets involved with. What they will say is, you know, they can help you identify things. But you know, this is the testing team's responsibility.
Okay, and there will be someone who will lead the team, right?
Yep, that'll be your test lead, for
Oh,
example.
that is a test lead. Okay, okay. So
Yeah.
he's not the scrum master. So he's a different person. Okay, got it.
No, so the Scrum Master, so once again, so the Scrum Master is mainly focusing on the sprint on the Scrum teams, right? This is okay. I understand now where the confusion is coming from. So I didn't explain it because I only talked about waterfall before. So I was talking about how the test plan would be used or written if it was a waterfall model. If it was an agile methodology, an agile Scrum methodology. Last class we recapped the iterations, right? In agile, and doing recap in agile, we noted that. Let's see here. So noting the recap in agile, we find the iterations right over here, right? So this all happens before your end-to-end. All right, so to explain the process properly, you know, you have 1, 2, and 3, right? So all of these increments is 3 iterations. Now, after these 3 iterations, you're gonna have what's called a release. The release means that everything that you worked on here as a team, or the code that you worked, or the testing that you, or the code that you tested, now all of this is going to be integrated into production, right? The live server. So if I go here, I'm gonna sign out here. So any enhancements made here in Amazon, right? So we did all of this, right? We did the header, the title, with the link, we did the sign in, we did all of this, right? The check, the text field, the button, right? We did all of that. So all of this now is going to get integrated, right? It all happened in these 3 iterations, which are, each of these should be 2 weeks each, depending on your team. And so, and so now that this is all completed, now we need to integrate it into, again, the actual user website, right? Not the mockup website in your environments. Well, they're not mockups, but like not the lower environments, right? You have what's called the lower environments and the higher environment. A lower environment, the lowest environment will be the dev environment, which is where the developers work. Then you have the QA environment, then you have the UAT. This, you know, this is increasing, and then you have sometimes, depending on the team, you might have the PTE environment, the performance environment, and then you have production, right? So production is the highest environment. That's something that you guys as a tester, you won't touch because that is live, right? So the code is going to go there, and by the code going there, we mean that we need to do a retest of everything, and then we need to make sure that whatever we wrote at the code and test, that we do a thorough end-to-end now of the application that is involved with our test. So your system integration, your integration is going to be the code that you worked on. An end-to-end flow is going to be from the very beginning of what the application has, including your code, to the end, an end-to-end scenario. This is something else, right? So, and then you're gonna run the regression, and this all happens at the end-to-end or SIT phase, okay, in Agile. So after all of this, once again, you go into end-to-end SIT phase. And once end-to-end is completed and the testers provide sign off for their testing, then it goes into a checkout to production. I hope that wasn't confusing. I'm gonna take it wasn't confusing since you guys are not saying anything.
No, it's good. Yeah. I mean, I clear myself.
Yep, no, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions on this, on the testing schedule?
No.
Risk and contingencies, we talked about this again. So here are some examples of risks. Changes to the original requirements of design. This is very big, something that could really deteriorate or change the course of our release, can push the release out, can cancel the release. You know, these are very dangerous things if they happen very late in the game. So in an agile scrum team, if this thing happens like if this thing happens like after like at the last week of testing of development, this becomes a problem. So, you know, as a tester, you should always be able to say, hey, this is too late in the game, I don't think we can do it, this is going to be a big risk if we try to introduce it and whatnot. At the same time, if it's not too late, still you want to make sure, hey, this is a big change, it's probably going to deteriorate our velocity based on the capacity overload. So we might need to move some stuff out. You know, as a tester, you guys should always be able to voice that out to your team. Your team will understand. They will say, okay, that makes sense. So let's kick things out. Because remember, the business stakeholders, they want to put as many things as they can into your plate, into the sprint. So it's your job to say whether you have the enough capacity or not. Lack of available and qualified personnel. So say, for example, see, prime example right now, in one of my teams, I own the performance engineering team as well. So in my performance engineering team right now, I have one resource low. I'm one resource short. Now, this research has created this gap has created some issues for me because you know, PE requires a lot of work, performance engineering requires a lot of work, requires updating scripts, requires running load testing, stress testing, endurance and whatnot. So I only have two guys doing all of this work, but then I need that third person, that gap which I have, to continue doing the necessary script changes and whatnot, but I haven't been able to find the person with the adequate skill set. So if I have a lack of available and qualified personnel, this is a risk. So these are risks that I've noted at my job, right? When we had a release, and we just had a release actually Friday, I'll have you know. So that release, you know, had a risk of lacking personnel. So good prime example right there. The lack of or late delivery from the development organization, that's something that I mentioned before. If the development team is taking longer to provide the delivery of said code changes, you know, this becomes a problem because that means you will have late check-ins, which can delay your end-to-end process. And if it delays it, so here's the thing with delaying an end-to-end process. Let's put it this way. In end-to-end, you have, so that you already have 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks for end-to-end. For end-to-end testing. But now dev, and so you're supposed to start 520. And then dev was supposed to give you the code on May 18th, right? Dev was supposed to complete on dev 18, and then end-to-end begins on May 20th. And so on, let's just say on June 4th, you were code freeze. And then on June 10 or 11 is a release. So this is what happens.
I'm sorry, what is the code freeze?
I'm about to explain it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So this is the process normally when you're about to go on when you're about to perform a release, when your code is about to go into production, right? So you did all the work during the springtime. So you had like 2 months, 2.5 months working on the enhancements, the code changes and all that stuff, and you did your sprint testing, and now it all comes to the end-to-end team to make sure that everything is integrated properly. And so what happens is yours is supposed to start on the 20th, but the development is delayed. Now, development says that they can't provide it until the 19th. If they provide on the 19th, remember that the testing team is to do the smoke test, right? Environment check, right? Which is part of the smoke. And then, you know, hopefully no issues. So if there are no issues, then you can go on your merry way. But if there are issues, this poses a problem, because now if there's an issue during the smoke test or the environment, maybe the environments are not available, right? The environments are late. All of this delays your 2 weeks. So now you're delayed by 1 day, right? Or if the dev said, hey, we're running into issues and we can't give you the code until the 20th, that's already 2 days late for you. So what happens now is that you're 2 days late and it starts to push your stuff. And if you exactly need 2 weeks in order to finish without crunch time, you're gonna end up going 2 days into code freeze. Code freeze is a week or time frame where node code can be merged, can be entered. So within these 2 weeks, all of the issues that you find in your testing, your end-to-end testing or your integration, have to be fixed within this time frame. Because during code freeze, no more code is allowed. This is where, just as his name implies, code freeze. That's it. You do not move code in or out. The testing team can continue to test. The problem is that during code freeze, if they still find an issue, it has to get a code unlock. A code unlock is I think somehow I ended up going for a formula here. I don't know. Just avoid that. So a code unlock is a process where you have to get the approval from the stakeholders and the business partners and the engineering lead and the tech lead and the application owner. You have to get approval from all of these people because remember, if you're in a bigger company, you have other teams also doing the testing, and this can potentially create risks for them as well, right? Because you're all going on release date on that same day. And so if that is the case and you find yourself on code unlocked, then that means that you have to bring in new code in, which means that you have to do a little more testing to make sure that the code that came in, depending on what it was, may not affect anything else. You're still pushing your testing further and further and further here. That becomes a big risk for the release that happens on June 11th. Okay. Any questions on that? This is actually important information that is good for you to know. So keep that in mind, guys.
How often does that happen?
As often as possible. Sometimes it happens every month. It depends when your release is happening. Sometimes, if you're in a blue, if you're in a blue-green company, that means that they do releases like as often as possible. That they can do releases even from one spring to the next, right? So it really depends on the company. Most large companies do releases either the smallest time frame will be a month. The longest in an agile team will be 3 months, a quarter. So you do your PA planning. You do your PA planning, say for the next, if it is on a quarterly basis, then you have 4 PA plannings, which happens, say, on January, and then on April, and then on June or July, and then on August or September, and so on and so forth until the end of the year. So what that means is that in January, your PA planning is going to determine the work that you're going to be doing for the next 3 months. Within the next 3 months, that work that you did is going to go into the release. And once again, that can change from 1 month to 2 months to 3 months. It all depends. So it can be very demanding at times. Oh boy, we're getting close to time here. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so once again, going back to risk and contingencies, lack of deliverables, requirements, design, code, late delivery of tools or other resources, like again, test data management, that you're not getting your test data on time, any tools that you require but require approval, and the approval takes about a week, and you submitted the request yesterday. You want to also note the contingencies, so like your workarounds for the risks, if you have identified them, right? So like, for example, you would need to move the schedule further up, do less testing if that's possible, or change the goals and the exit criteria, right? So it's good to know the mitigations to make sure that you have contingencies in place. Any questions there? Q&A, guys, Q&A. Hit me with your best shot.
I have a little confusion about the code freeze. So during end-to-end testing, the code is freezed, or after end-to-end testing?
So if you're looking at the schedule, so say, once again, so developers have to provide the code to you at the latest on May 18th, right?
Okay.
So that is tomorrow, per se.
Mhm.
So from tomorrow, right, by Friday, you need to start your end-to-end testing, right? So
Okay.
within so from the 18th to the 20th, you're gonna make sure that your environments are up and running. You're gonna make sure that your smoke test is going and you have no issues. So on the 20th, you
issues.
begin your end-to-end. End-to-end is done next 2 weeks, and thereafter you have the code freeze. The code freeze, once again, no code, no more
So it's
integration is allowed
after end-to-end testing.
after end-to-end testing.
So during that code freeze, we don't do any test or nothing.
No,
at
you
all.
can continue to test. What you cannot do is
Change the- we
integrate
can-
any code.
Oh, we can integrate.
So for
It's clear
example,
now.
so if you have a defect,
Mhm.
so if you have a defect, right? Defect has to go to the developer. And from the developer, says it's fixed. This is defect life cycle here, guys.
Mhm.
It's fixed. Now it goes back to the tester, and the
Mhm.
tester is doing retesting. And pass
Yeah.
or fail.
That's all fair.
And from there, you're gonna continue the cycle and so on. So what happens is that if the defect requires, so some defects may need just may just need some database changes. Database do not require deployments. So deployments, so that you wouldn't have a problem during code freeze. However, if the defect contains code changes, then you need to do a code unlock, which
Code
once
unlock.
again requires a lot of approvals. So this also becomes a risk.
So only if there is no defect found during the time code freeze time, there's going to be going to the release, right?
Not only that, I mean, you can find a defect during your end-to-end, but the developers take forever to find the fix for said defect, right? Because they can't figure it out. So they have to do a lot of analysis. Whatever fixes they have provided end up in failure. So it continues to move in the cycle. It doesn't happen only in the testing during code freeze. It happens at any level of the testing. So long as if it leads to the code freeze week, then it is a code unlock. So the closer you get to code freeze, the higher the risk becomes. And you note that in your triage calls.
All right, I got it now. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Are you guys divided in teams?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, then I will hesitate to give you this assignment for now. Until you form a team. We'll get that going soon. What I will ask you then to do is I want you to, I'm gonna give you a page. I'm gonna send you a page, a link page, and the assignment is going to be to create test scenarios and create test cases for said page. Okay, I'm gonna be sending that in Slack. How many, is anyone here not in Slack?
I'm not.
I'm not in Slack.
I'm not too.
I'm
Okay,
not.
Not either.
Not either. I think none of us. I don't know.
well, that's not good. All right,
He
that's
usually
fine.
sends the assignments on the WhatsApp group.
Right. Well, Slack, it's a better tool, but I understand. That's fine. I will send it to you on WhatsApp. I will put it in the WhatsApp chat. The assignment, and I'll have Shanto send you guys my documents so you guys can follow that. But I'll send you a template that you should be able to use. So follow that template to create the scenarios and the test cases. You can send it to my email, or you can send it to Shanto, either way. I'm not sure if you
Getting
guys
the
know what
test
my email is.
slides.
You will be getting the slides, yes.
Okay.
Do you mind putting our email in the chat, please?
Yeah, I was just
I
gonna
was
say.
just doing that.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, so you can send me your assignments to that email. They're gonna be due before the next session I'm not sure if the next session is gonna be Saturday. I'll get confirmation on it because I have a feeling that Jill wanted to start you guys on basic Java, but let's see. If that's the case,
I have a quick question. So we're gonna do the assignment and you're not sure if you're gonna be next week because that's what happened with the Agile thing. I'm sorry, Jira. We did some assignment and Joe wasn't here that week. So you're gonna give us,
well, I mean, your assignment hasn't disappeared yet, has it?
no, but we did not get any feedback. So we don't know
I
what's
understand.
going wrong. So that's what I was saying. So if we can send us a feedback by email, that would be great too.
Mhm.
Don't have to be in person.
I
just-
understand. Makes sense. You can send me your assignments of the Jira, because in the end, it was my lessons regardless. But we had to make some changes, due to some of the holidays that some of you, experience, like Eid and whatnot. So, the schedules had to change a little, and due to those circumstances, I was unable to make these classes. So, Jill was, taking that over, but you can send the assignments to me for Jira, and I'll go over them.
I believe Joel was supposed to give us a multiple choice quiz for Jira, and that was never created by him. And then I'm remembering the group chat, he just stated that just review Jira. So
Mhm.
I don't believe there was any assignment unless I missed out on that.
Yeah, I
No,
think so. There are no assignment.
there
So
was an
some of,
assignment. There was, I'm sorry to cut you all off. There was an assignment. He said, play around with Jira, see what he showed us how to do a case study and he asked us to play around. And we did play around and put some stuff and we thought maybe he's gonna go over it, over what we did. I'm not saying he gave an assignment per se, I'm just saying he just told us to play around with Jira the
okay,
software, and we did. And
that's
thought,
fine. I'll give you a quick quiz on it next time. You guys, since you guys are pushing so much for a quiz on it, we'll just do that.
Another thing I want to clarify. So is this going to be like you'll do the class every 2 weeks, or like
Every
next
week.
session every week you'll be here? So will you be here every Tuesday and then Joel would be here every Saturday, or how would that work? Or is that
That would-
or are we
that-
just playing it by ear?
That would be the gist of it, yes.
Okay, got you. Okay.
Yeah.
So as you do this, you'll have your own assignments
Correct.
regarding of what you're teaching, and then Joel would have his own
Correct.
assignment. Okay.
So, I don't know if you guys got the syllabus for the course, but I'm gonna be teaching you guys everything that has to deal with SDLC, all of the fundamentals for testing. Anything that you're gonna learn with Joe later on is gonna be something that you're gonna apply whatever you've learned from me in there, because when you start learning automation, you're gonna need the fundamentals of testing methodologies and testing practices to understand what you have to do with the framework. So, this is always this is all fundamental right now for you guys.
so do you have a syllabus for us, like a roadmap, like what's gonna be the next topic, which you can provide
Well,
us?
from my end, for sure. From my end, I can tell you that we're gonna continue on to the next lesson is gonna. Normally I would have given you this test, but I'm gonna give you guys a test where you're gonna be creating you're gonna be working as a group, but once again, I need you guys to be team up yet. So I'm gonna talk with you about the teams. But you're gonna get an assignment that you're doing groups. It's about creating a test plan, a high-level test plan. It's going to be involving creating scenarios and test cases, and it's going to involve an actual game that you will have to test, and you're going to have to give me all of your assessment together as a team, of course. So if we break it down into 3 teams, it's going to be a 3-team assignment. So and whatnot. From there, I'm going to be talking with you guys about mobile testing. Gonna be doing mobile testing, and I think that will end it. Since you'll already covered most of the other stuff early on. I hope. Did you get, so, I keep asking this. All right, that's fine. So you guys already covered all of the testing types, performance testing, non-functional testing, functional testing, all of this stuff, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you should be fine then.
No,
You
I
should-
meant to say there's like a, I'm so sorry to being so hard. It's just that I want to say, like, if you have like kind of a list of things, we'll be going one by one. I'm not being very, trying not to be very, thing here, like, just want to know, like, what we're gonna
You're
do.
looking for a syllabus. That's fine.
Kind of,
That's-
yes,
Just
yes.
now, you're not being anything. You're being a
I'm
student.
not being
so-
difficult. It's just that I don't mind people, one person comes in next week. I just want to know what I'm gonna study next week beforehand I jump in
Right.
the class.
And if we
Makes sense. Makes sense. So let's do this. I will be providing you guys with hopefully a, why can I not open this? Jesus. Hopefully we'll be providing you guys with a syllabus soon. So let me gather that stuff. This document here, I will send you also.
also, I was looking at the curriculum, like, we finished agile methodologies and the waterfall. And there is other option, it's a V model. Are we going to do that?
So the V model, I would have thought it to you on, am I still sharing? Let me see. I am still sharing. I would have showed it to you on this. Did I close it? I hope not. During the first session of the class, which V model is right here. This is where you would have been learning V model, with SDLC and SDLC and whatnot. So you guys already went through all of this, but there's really no need for us to go over V model. I can go over it on the next class if you guys want to. But it's very similar, to agile and waterfall, just that the process itself, this was the, agile was the evolution of the V model, to be precise here, because the V model was the evolution of waterfall, because companies wanted to kind of find issues faster, right? So they started to do what's called the V model, which is like at every level of the SDLC, they will have a testing phase, right? So for the low level design, which involves the coding, you will have the unit testing, right? And then for the high level design, which is like when you already have all the scenarios and all that stuff, right? You have the integration testing, because integration testing is the scenarios that you're gonna be testing, correct? Which is the coding that is assigned by the developers. And then at the requirement analysis, then you have the system testing, which is like end-to-end testing and all that stuff, right? So because once again, the requirement analysis involves really everything that's going to be covered. And so that becomes a system level testing. And so you really, that is what the V model is, and I'm explaining it to you guys in a rush format. But essentially that's really what the V model is. For every business, KPI, key performance indicator, you have a testable key performance indicator.
Thank you.
That's really V model. No problem. Okay, so I guess in WhatsApp, I'm going to be sending you guys the assignment that you're going to be doing. I'm going to be sending you the documentation also that you're going to be needing. I'm not sure if I can show it here. So this should help you guys. Yeah, it's actually here. Okay, so I should be able to send it to you guys. Let's see. Can you guys get that through the chat?
Why don't you introduce us to Slack? Something new to learn, but we can get used to it.
I can introduce you to Slack eventually, but not now. It's gonna take some time. But
Yeah, I saw the Slack option in the Jira. Is it the similar one?
this is Slack. This is our Slack. So I'm gonna set up a channel for this class. So I'm gonna be sending you guys the invite to join. So be on the lookout for it. I'll probably need all your emails and whatnot, and it's free, so you don't have to really do anything. But here it's a very good format to ask questions, for you to know where the homeworks are, for you to know where any training is, for you guys to have any open questions and whatnot. So it's very good really to navigate and wonder about things. Okay, that was Slack. So once again, the question, can you guys open the document that I just sent to you on the chat?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so here is your assignment, ladies and gentlemen. On that template, let me open it up. On this template, following this template, I want you to identify a test case ID. This is going to be individual, not group stuff. Based on what you have here, write down what you think you need to write down. You know, be creative if you have to. But make sure you go through each field here so you understand what it is, what it means. Okay, so your purpose here is to create test cases, test scenario. You can evolve to more than that. I'm gonna send you the link that you're gonna be testing. Let's see if I can actually get it right now. Here it is. You're gonna be testing this page here. You don't have to actually test it, but I want you to. In this page, your analysis, your requirement analysis is to fill out, create a registration form, right? Like so. So that I, as a user, should be able to log in when I need to. Okay, so this is your assignment.
Right, so whatever we're gonna do inside this, so you'll be able to see by yourself, like, there is no permission, you don't give us permission, or we don't give permission anymore.
No, so once again, you don't really have to do anything with this page. What you need to do with this page is really utilize this page to give me the information. I'm not even showing it to you guys. What you're seeing in this page, your scenario should be the registration form, a student registration form.
Right,
So if
yes.
it is a student registration form, you know, I mean, telling you anymore is giving you the answers. But essentially what you'll do is, you will fill this out completely based on what you're supposed to do here. Does that make sense? Is that
Yes.
good?
Completely.
Okay.
Totally.
Do you guys want me to write that down, or you guys are gonna remember?
No, it's good. I mean, for me, it's
I
good.
think we'll remember.
Okay, very good. Yes. Remember, you guys are adults. You guys are professionals. So
So we don't
Develop-
have to do the actual test. I mean, using
no, you don't. Not yet.
the driver. Yeah. That's
Not yet. But you will eventually. All right, very good, guys. Thank you very much to this class. Let me stop the recording so it doesn't run any longer.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm actually having issues with opening up that file, the test case template.
You're having issues